Good afternoon. Today is the 3rd of January, although I think you'll probably be seeing this on the 4th of January, and it's time for the 6-month ownership report on our 2003 Rover 45 2-litre V6 Connoisseur. We got this car in June. It spent the first little while of its ownership with Mr. Colin Rubbish Mechanic, having some work done, and I'm going to try to remember all the work we've had done to this car because it is an awful lot. These cars are now very rare. There are about 90 of them left taxed on the road. Obviously there are plenty of 45s, but 45 V6s, because they only made 700 of them, they're not very common at all. This isn't the car that Ian Seabrook used to own. That was an earlier car. It was a 2000 in a different colour. And yes, we've done, I think, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 miles in this car since we picked it up, which actually was from a dealership in the north of England in June. Wears what are called the Cosmos alloy wheels, 16 inches. These are found on the later 45 V6s. There's very little actually to distinguish a 45 V6 from the standard models externally, because these wheels and things like the chrome mirror caps and the headlamp washers are not unique to a V6 model. However, there are two ways you can tell that this is a V6. One of them is the plinth on the front bumper there. That's not found in the 4-cylinder models, and also by the V6 badge. The majority of 45 V6s are pre-facelift. The facelift was about March 2004. There are very, very few facelift models. There are also some hatchback variants which weren't sold in this country. I think Holland had a number of them. But usually the variant that you'll see if you see any 45 V6 will be a pre-facelift saloon like this one. If you open it up, the later pre-facelift and all the post-facelift cars in the 45 range had these white dials. Generally they signified that the car had the new electrical system that was introduced on the 45s and MGZSs in mid-2003, but actually the 45 V6 got the dials first, which are sort of like the 75 ones are. This, however, is a March 2003 car, and so it's still got the old Lucas type electrical system in it, which is a lot better than the later Petron system. One of the things that we've had done is this radio. The car does need as well at some point, if I just shut the door here, the car does need at some point to have the clock done, because it's a very common failure item on these cars. We'll just, if I just turn that on, you see, yeah, that's what we need to have done at some point if we want to bother about it. However, we do have air conditioning that works. I've had that regassed. You can check the Sony unit, but the original stereo was a Becker sat-nav unit, which is actually worth a lot of money these days. That's taken out of the car because we didn't have the code for it, so we couldn't use that. So lots of sort of fake wood around. There's the 12-volt socket, or cigarette lighter, it used to be called in the old days. That thing on the dashboard is an aftermarket thing for a phone, but was bad before we bought the car. Glove box, plenty of room for circuit breaker documents in there, and of course on a 45, the handbook and the service history are one thing. Very unusual. Door cards on a 45 often do sag, and you know, these are a bit saggy, but they're not too bad. Very, very familiar stalks to anybody who's driven a lot of Hondas and Rovers from the 80s and 90s, as well as this electric mirror control. Because this is a later 45 V6, there are no controls for the stereo, only for the cruise control. That there is the button activator, and I think down here, there we are, that's the winter mode for the automatic gearbox. This is a 5-speed Jatco automatic gearbox. It's not the CVT that was fitted to a 45 lower in the range that came with a 1.8 4-cylinder engine. We've got an electric sunroof as well in this car. I should actually replace the aero because that got damaged in an automatic car wash earlier this year. They're not expensive to fix, I just haven't got around to doing it. We don't actually use the radio in the car anyway, it's mainly Bluetooth streaming and things. Sleeves got for door pockets, and you know, the switches are a bit strange. They actually have one on the door for the driver and then the rest are down here, like on a 600. There is a sort of centre section here with a cup holder bit you can remove and put bits in there as well. It's the only way you can get cup holders in a 45 or an MGZS. MGZS, of course, was the sporty version of this car, and before the 45 was launched, which was right at the end of 99, early 2000, January 2000 really, there was a car called the Rover 400, the second 400 they made, that was heavily based on this, and a lot of the parts are interchangeable, of course. So if we use the key to get into the boot, very big boot on a 45 saloon. There was a hatchback available as well, and it's vast. You can fold the seats in this, but we've never bothered to do that. It's a bit of a faff until we don't. Hiding around here is the inlet manifold, but we've had change. It's a very common failure point on V6 engined Rovers of this time. And then underneath there we've had a face of a spare wheel put in because this car didn't come with one. All the radio code when we bought it. We've had the tyres replaced on this car as well, because 3 out of the 4 tyres we got the car were illegal. We've had the brake calipers replaced because the car actually had a sticking caliper that was really bad. One had been replaced before it bought the car, but the other one needed replacing too. So I've actually been through 2 entire sets of brake pads on this car, which Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, has very kindly fitted for me. So all the tyres are new. Rear brakes are pretty, apart from the disc are absolutely fine. If we take a look under the bonnet as well, we will see what's been done under there, and again, it is quite a lot. One of the reasons why we're going to be laying this car up is because it's had a lot of cooling system issues, and as you can see, I've driven about half a mile, and yeah, I'm going to have to top that up again. The first thing that actually went on this car in dramatic fashion was the plastic thermostat housing, which I can't show you because it's buried somewhere in the V of the engine there. That failed spectacularly in July when we picked up our new Sanyong Tivoli, and yeah, need to go have a recovery truck. That's been replaced, as has the inlet manifold. This is actually off a car that was being broken for spares in the summer by a fellow member of the Rover 45 and MGZS owners club. Thank you again, Jason, for offering that at a most reasonable price. My friend Jordan, who has a car with the 2.5 litre version of this engine. This is a 2 litre, generating 150 horsepower. He actually sorted that out for me, as well as the cruise control diaphragm, which I always forget where exactly it is. It's somewhere around here. I never remember exactly where it is. Yeah, it's just down there. That has been replaced. Well, that was actually originally a plastic part, but it's now been replaced with a metal one. New battery, of course, because the battery that this car occasionally came with was totally useless. It wouldn't hold any charge, so we had to buy a new one immediately. It's had a new coolant reservoir done, and a new cap, although there's some leak going on somewhere in the engine. So I mean, I'm sort of confined to journeys of about half a mile or something, because I keep topping that up, but that keeps going down. So it could be actually the head gaskets have gone in the engine, which is a real shame. I'm going to get Jordan to come and look at that in a couple of weeks. I mean, you know, we're in tier 4 lockdown here, so it's not as if you know, I'm going too far at the moment anyway. We've got another car, so it's not a huge problem, I suppose. Just wait to diagnose that. He has got a head gasket tester, which he will be actually using and seeing if they have gone, because that's a very big job, and the parts are £300 alone to actually do those. So yes, that sort of perhaps calls the future of this car and the fleet into question, but you know, we'll not think about that too much at the moment. It's not that clean because the car washes are closed on the Tier 4, and so I've not had it cleaned, but it doesn't look too bad. Miles per gallon wise on this car, it's around 29 miles per gallon on a pretty good day in mixed driving. It doesn't get very good economy, particularly because it's got a torque converter automatic gearbox in it. But yes, we really like this car, but one of the main problems with it is the rear space isn't very good. You can see my driving position here, and I'm 5'11", and it's quite far back. It's a bit of a struggle to climb in. I'm not going to do that today. Same sort of issue with the door cards at the back of it. It's not quite as bad. Headline sometimes sags in there, and it's sort of almost about to do it, but not really. There's an ashtray in the back here. The seats are nice and comfortable. The seats are not the same as the car in Seabrook cab, because this is what's called a Project Drive car. So later on in the life of MG Rover, they decided to start cutting costs, and one of the things they did was get rid of the 75 style interior and replace it with a slightly cheaper one. But this car is actually ultra low emission zone compliant in London, not in Birmingham, but it is compliant in London, which is interesting. Yes, the ultra low emission zone and clean air zones in this country are a story for another time. We did have an MOT done on this car last month by Mr. Coleman's uncle, which was very good of him, and also at that point the CV gator on this particular wheel was changed, which is a separate video actually. The only advisory I have is that the exhaust is a bit corroded, but I knew that anyway. I think the catalytic converter on this car is the original one actually, so it's not quite a good one. There was a bit of rust underneath the passenger seat on the floor underneath the car when I got this, which is a very common problem with Rover 45, particularly ones with sunroofs. And yes, it was a bit sort of rusty, but Mr. Coleman treated that. So underneath this car, and I've seen it myself on the ramp, it actually is pretty good for one this age. So there we are. I think that's most of what I've had to say. And all these bits you've had to do on the car, obviously they have sort of added up. It's what happens when owning an older car, and of course, Mr. Richardson Furious Driving, who has reviewed this car on his channel, and you'll see a walk around of this car as well on the Wells Wheels YouTube channel. Mr. Richardson has a t-shirt saying "Broken Rovers and Shattered Dreams." It's not entirely broken, I don't think, at the moment, because it's just drove it here about half a mile, but I don't want to have to keep putting coolant in it every single time I go anywhere, and so it's not really, I don't think, going to make it up. If it has head gaskets, have them changed anywhere. It's going to have to be probably taken on a truck. It's a bit of a shame, really, but at least this is one of the reasons why we keep a modern car for most of the journeys we do, because I just don't want to have to fix this sort of stuff all the time when it inevitably goes wrong, which is what happens on a lot of older cars. If you're running a business and things. But anyway, that's probably quite enough for now. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you want to, turn on notifications and click the bell to be notified of new videos. I've also got a Facebook page and Instagram page if you're interested in those. And thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching.